Have you ever heard of the Scottish Funding Council? It's a government body that basically distributes funding to universities and colleges of further education, higher education. So the Scottish Funding Council is very important if you are such an institution, because they give you your money. Now you might think that their role would be quite straightforward. They look at demand for different courses in different areas and allocate money on that basis, but oh no, of course not. This is an agent of the Scottish Government, so therefore it needs to deliver a side order of the Scottish Government's ideology, and is using its power of holding the purse strings to impose its ideology on these institutions. Now, to be honest, I'd imagine with a lot of institutions, this sort of extreme progressive ideology doesn't take a lot of imposing, because they're probably quite keen on it already. But in any case, this is what the government is doing. So the Scottish Funding Council has produced a document that institutions can basically put their name on, put their logo on, and then use it as their anti-racism document. So I'm going to read you a few bits of it. Just listen to some of this. So on the first page it says, as part of Scotland's further and higher education sector, we, insert organisational name here, as students and staff and partners, recognise and acknowledge that racism is embedded in our policies, processes and practices. Okay, how about that? So they don't know which institution it is. So whichever college or university you're running, it just is assumed, it's a fact, that your policies are racist. Your processes are racist, your practices are racist. Now, I'd be fascinated to see an example of a racist policy in a university or a further education college. I cannot imagine what it would be. But they don't just imagine it, they know that it's there. Before you even know what the institution is, they know that its policies are racist. Anyway, it gives a few examples of racism. Okay, how about this? If you say to someone, do people eat insects in your country? They say, call it racism. Now, the other day in a supermarket, I saw insect burgers or something for sale. So if someone said to me, do people eat insects in your country? I would say, well, I assume some do, since they're selling this stuff. I actually ate some chocolate with ants in it once. And I've had some of these joke things where it's like a dare to eat it as well. But saying, do people eat insects in your country, is apparently racism. Here are some other examples of racism. I just don't see colour. I don't think of you as black. Now, to my mind, that sounds like the old-fashioned, like non-racist equality point of view. I just treat everyone the same. But if you want to just treat anyone the same, you don't want to take notice of the race, then you're a racist. In other words, if you don't want people of different races to be treated differently, then you're a racist. If you just want to treat them all the same, you're a racist. And this is what universities, you assume, have to go along with. Otherwise, the money's not going to flow. Right, they've got a section that explains about the 4 different sorts of attitudes that white people can have. Obviously, white people are the problem here. The worst sort of people are the white people who believe in white supremacy. Then the not quite as bad sorts are the ones who are afflicted with white indifference. Then the sort of getting there sort of white people have white awareness. And the white people who really have got it, well, they are white allies. They've bought into white allyship, if you like. Right, do you want to hear some of the characteristics of white supremacy? You ready for this? Belief that we live in a meritocracy. So if you believe that this society is meritocratic, then you're a white supremacist. Do I believe this society is meritocratic? To a large degree, yes. No society is ever going to be perfectly meritocratic. I'm not sure it's actually desirable to even try to make it one, because the degree of government control will be so extreme. Anyway, here's another one. Another sign of white supremacy. The belief that black underachievement is seen to be due to their dysfunctionality or pathology. Right, black underachievement. For example, poorer performance at school, which is the case in a lot of areas. And also fatherlessness is very prevalent in black communities, in Britain and in America as well. And I think it's quite reasonable to say, since fatherlessness is a strong indicator of educational underachievement, then there could be a connection there. So the underachievement within the black community in general could be, well, will be related to the dysfunctionality of family life within that same group of people. And that's a perfectly straightforward thing to say. But according to this, if you think that, then you're a white supremacist. How they make that connection, I really cannot imagine. Right, let's say you just get one better from that, to white indifference. So a sign that you are suffering from white indifference is that you will be a passionate defender of academic freedom. Words fail me. Or a passionate defender of the right to offend. So if you defend academic freedom, then you're not quite a white supremacist, you're just one step up from that, according to the Scottish Government's funding body. Right, white indifference. So you'll view anti-racist initiatives as ideological endeavours linked to cultural wars and political correctness. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying in this video, and that's a sign apparently that I suffer from white indifference. Another sign of white indifference: happy to make tokenistic gestures, but total refusal to accept one's own complicity in the reproduction of racism. Okay, you're right, I don't accept my complicity in the reproduction or production of racism. I really don't think I do that. So no, I don't accept it. So as far as the Scottish Government's concerned, I'm like one step up from a white supremacist. Right, the next one, the people who are sort of getting there but are not there yet, white awareness. They believe that racism functions like a mental illness that only white people have. How about that then? How can anyone write that and think it's okay to write that? Functions like a mental illness that only white people have. So if we're taking people on the journey in the right direction, we've got to persuade them to go through the stage where racism is like a mental illness that only white people have. Why only white people have it, I really don't know, because racial tensions in all directions have been prevalent throughout human history. Right, let's look at the ultimate. So if you really have arrived, then you have arrived at white allyship. Let's see what that involves. Well, it involves the rejection of deficit models and acceptance of the link between white privilege and educational outcomes. So when you look at educational outcomes, generally speaking, you'll find Jews do the best, like Chinese, ethnically Chinese, Japanese type people tend to outperform the white population. Then there'll be white population then, you know. So white British will tend to come, say, you know, 3rd out of 7 in the educational league table, say, but that's the result of white privilege. Again, it doesn't make any sense. It's totally ridiculous, but just any difference you find between racial groups, it's because of white privilege. You don't need to present an argument or statistics. It just is. And universities have to, have to base their policies on this. And the last thing, to be a white ally, you have to believe that the onus is on white people to build sustained partnerships with black people. So in any situation, it's the job of the white people to make a special effort to get to know the black people. I've been in several situations where I've been in the minority as a white person. Do we want black people to think? If a white person goes up to them, do you want the black person to be thinking, oh, they're probably doing it because that's what they're supposed to do, isn't it? They don't actually want to talk to me. They just think you have to do this. Is that really healthy? No, it's not. I mean, it is absolutely outrageous that this is the degree to which the Scottish Funding Council is politicised. Of course, in the Scottish Parliament, there will be no one, no MSP, let alone a party, who would dream of challenging any of this. This just goes through unperturbed, taken for granted in the Scottish Parliament. Just look at one other area very quickly before I look at it. They've also got gender policy as well. And they say to all these institutions of higher and further education, which subjects have an imbalance of male and or female students of more than 75% of one gender. So if your car mechanics course is more than 3/4 male, or your English literature course or whatever is more than 3/4 female, then you have to have a gender action plan to see what you're going to do about it. Something must be done. Why can't they just say, why don't we let boys and girls choose to do what they want to? And that's absolutely fine. Follow their own interests, and that's fine. The people who write this stuff, how would they have felt if someone, a woman, say, writing this, if someone had said, no, you can't go and work for the Scottish Funding Council, being their gender specialist. You have to go and be a civil engineer instead. We've got to get the gender balance. What would she have thought of that? She wouldn't have been too happy. So these people want other people to do other than what they want to. They want them to follow courses that they don't really want to. They don't reflect their interests, while they themselves do exactly what they've wanted to do. So that's a little insight into the Scottish Funding Council. I mean, there's nothing particularly startling, isn't it? This is the Scottish Government in action. It imposes its ideology through every means at its disposal. Anything the government has a finger in, then its ideology will be flowing in that direction, and that influence of that on Scottish society, Scottish culture, attitudes within Scotland is absolutely massive, and we would challenge it. Okay, thanks for watching.